Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Cindy Cordova, and I'm a Senior Assistant Director within the Board of Admissions here at Boston College. And today I'm joined by a team of experts within the Board of Admissions who I'm very happy to call my colleagues. And together we're going to go over demystifying the application process for underrepresented students. So if you're a student who identifies as maybe the first in your family to go to college, a student of color, a student who's applying from a rural area, we hope that this information session today can provide you with a lot of information regarding how we review applications here at Boston College, but also for us to demystify some of the myths that we hear when we are talking to students and families who are going through this process. Now, this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to reference the recording within a few days on the Discover Boston College website, which is the same website that you used to sign up for this event. We also just want to take a quick minute to acknowledge that this is a very difficult year for many families, and we understand that this global pandemic is impacting you as you apply to a university, your inability to visit campus, and also questions that you might have in terms of how we review applications and how we're going to be reviewing applications this year based on the interruptions that have occurred. And so we just want you to know that first and foremost, we practice a clear understanding and flexibility when it comes to this review process. We're very humbled that we get to review your applications, and that compassion extends throughout this year as we review your applications and acknowledge the disruptions that have happened. And so we just hope that you and your loved ones are okay, that you're doing okay, and that you see us as a resource as you go through this process. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues for their introductions for this evening. And we'll go ahead and get started with Mary Beth.
Thank you, Cindy. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Mary Beth Chevry, and I'm an Associate Director in the Office of Admission. Thanks again for being with us.
Next, we have Stephen.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. My name is Stephen Koo, and I am also one of the Associate Directors in the Office of Undergraduate Admission. It's very exciting to get a chance to work with this group of great counselors, but also get a chance to talk with you this evening as we really do kind of break down some of the myths and also maybe answer as many questions as we can from any students who are out there.
Thank you, Stephen, for being here. And Howard?
Good evening. I'm Howard Singer, yet another Associate Director in the Office of Undergraduate Admission. I claim seniority in the staff. I've been doing this for 34 years, and everything that I forget, my esteemed colleagues will fill in the blanks. I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you and debunk some of the myths and answer some of your questions.
Thanks so much for being here, everyone. And we also will have Associate Director Paul Benito join us in a few minutes. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, we invite you to type in your questions through the Q&A box, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We have disabled the chat, but you'll be able to add any questions, comments through the Q&A box. And we hope that for the next hour or so, we'll be able to have a productive conversation to help you along the way. So this session is about demystifying. There are a lot of myths out there that we hear when we are going to your high schools or we're connecting with you on the phone or in person. And so we wanted to, first of all, to set the tone, debunk some of the myths that we hear that might be present in your mind that maybe leads to some misconceptions when it comes to the application process to a selective university like Boston College. So you might have heard of some of these myths. If you have, please let us know through the Q&A box. And if you have other myths that you've heard as well, please feel free to include them through the Q&A box. But we'll start with this first one here. And Stephen, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about this myth that we often hear when we are talking to students and families.
All right. Thank you very much, Cindy. The word best. I would say that's a very subjective word. It's really based upon lots of different opinions. Maybe it's your own personal opinion. And certainly if you start talking about lowest acceptance rates, That certainly means a college is perhaps very, very popular. I would say maybe has very high prestige. Yeah, a lot of people want to go there, and they can't take as many people as they probably like. But I'd say, yeah, if you start talking about lowest acceptance rate, you are probably talking about a great school. However, we're talking about best, and best is really applicable to you personally. You, your college search process, the application process, and we always say, what is the best fit for you? And I think as you go through this process, maybe you think of, okay, what kind of learner am I? Would I like lectures? Would I like seminar style? How well do I get to know professors? Environment, what type of campus are you looking for? Size and location, how many students? I think how far or close to home, urban, rural, there are so many different considerations for you. And of course, what can you study? Do they offer the major that you want? There's so many things that you want in a college experience. So what would be best for you? And I think the things I just talked about are pretty normal things that everyone thinks about when they start applying to colleges or researching colleges. But there are other big pieces here. We said tonight it's about the underrepresented student. So a lot of times we hear from students, okay, tell me about financial aid. And there's merit, there's need-based financial aid. There are lots of different types of ways of thinking about how do I pay for a college education? Support. Everybody wants to feel supported at a college or university, wherever their home is for the next 4 years. So if you start talking about being a first gen student and you're navigating your way through this, going to college, first one in your family, is there support for you? Are there offices there? How do you feel in terms of the people around you at that university or college? Students from different backgrounds, multicultural support, inclusivity, diversity. If those are important to you, find schools where you know that there is support. Things that I think I never even thought about when I was going to college, I never thought about retention and graduation rates. So retention, you go to a college for freshman year, what percentage of students come back for sophomore year? You want to go to a school where people return. Graduation rates, I know from a federal standpoint, they look at a 6-year graduation rate, but look at, okay, is it a 4-year experience? You want to finish college, so you get into that school, you do well at that school, you are retained, you go for a sophomore year, but do you graduate in 4 years? We want to make sure that people feel supported at that university academically in all different ways. And so what it really comes down to is find out what's best for you and your future. So I guess we always urge any prospective applicants or prospective students, talk to students who go to those schools. Ask questions that help you figure out what is the best fit for you. So best in this context really comes down to your best personal fit.
Thanks so much, Stephen. So many different layers to this one sentence here. Colleges with the lowest acceptance rates are the best colleges. And I think you did a really great job talking about the support networks, retention, persistence, all of these different things that will help students not only be admitted to the university, but also continue to come back every year so that they can graduate and have a positive impact in their lives and for their families as well. So thanks so much for going over that. Another myth that we typically hear is no one is reading my essays. What is holistic review anyways? So this is something that goes back into the process of a holistic review reading process. And so at selective universities like Boston College, we practice holistic review. We see you as a whole person. So it wouldn't be fair for us to just review your transcript or testing without understanding a little bit more about what you have overcome, your life story, your things that you're passionate about, your interests. And so all of that helps us create a class that is diverse in every sense of the word. When I'm reviewing a transcript, I know that I have to also read the recommendation letters from the counselors and the teachers to understand what is the context of this school that the student is attending. How have they sought help? It's okay to ask for help in high school. Maybe in college, you will also be asking for help in some way or another. So being able to understand that from the recommendation letters is really helpful for us. And then going into the essays, we get to know you a little bit better. We don't hold interviews here at BC. So your essay is a great way for you to introduce yourself to the Board of Admissions. And I know that might sound intimidating because you don't know us, we're strangers, but it really is a great way for you to reflect on who you are, to have this opportunity to pause and think about what you have been able to overcome, how you got to where you are today, and think about your life story and use that reflection to present yourself to the Board of Admissions. We enjoy reading the essays. I can say for personal experience that there are many memorable essays that stay with me. There is no perfect formula that we're looking for. It really is about letting your voice come through and letting your life story come through. But I will say that all of this is part of the puzzle that we're trying to gather from different parts of your application to get to know you a little bit better in the process. And we certainly enjoy reading the essays. We wouldn't ask you for the essays if we didn't enjoy reading them. And they certainly give us more information about you. And all of this is part of the holistic review, which is what we're trying to emphasize when you apply to a selective university like BC. Moving on, what are some other things that we hear about? Paul, here's Paul Benito. I'm gonna let you, Paul, introduce yourself to the audience. And also if you can just talk about this myth here, test scores can make or break my chances of getting in. What do you have to say to the audience tonight?
Great, thanks, Cindy. Hello to all my colleagues. My name is Paul Benito, Associate Director, Undergraduate Admission here at Boston College. I'm glad to be with you tonight. I'm glad to see so many participants, and please keep those questions going. We're going to try to keep our comments brief so you get a lot of opportunity to get those questions answered for you in this next hour. I just got off another session, and we spent a lot of time talking about these test scores. And I think in light of the pandemic, that seems to be a little bit of a silver lining right now, and the fact that so many schools have gone test optional, including Boston College. So what that means for you is that gives you the opportunity to really concentrate on the other gray areas of your application, the stuff we can't quantify, your activities. Someone spoke about the personal statement. Cindy just spoke about that. So in building a class at Boston College, the test scores is just one piece of your candidacy. And in most cases, if you are looking at booklets online, you'll see colleges normally list two numbers that list what their test score ranges are. But unfortunately, as a high school student, sometimes you get misinformation about thinking that that's an average and thinking that that's a number that you need to aspire to get to gain admission. But as a range, which is what every school gives, it's saying that 50% of the students that were admitted fell between that range. So 25% of those students had lower and 25% of the students had higher. So for all intents and purposes, all of you are going to be in that range, supporting your application with the other information that we need to build our class, to make sure that you're going to be a valuable citizen in that community. So fortunately this year, where it is test optional, you have even more control on whether or not you want to send them in or not send them in. And I know you're skeptical, because for your entire collegiate path to this point, it has been about those test scores. But we're trying to make sure that you realize that it's going to be, the other parts of your application are going to be just as important as they were before. And now the test scores are not going to be as important as they were before. So embrace all those opportunities for you to share as much information as you can of who you are and who you might be at a school like Boston College.
Thank you, Paul. We're so happy that you're here. So moving on to the next myth. I'm going to ask Howard to go through this one, because I know you hear this often when you're traveling as well. I have a better chance of getting in because I go to a private school. What do you have to say about that, Howard?
Thank you, Cindy. I hear that a lot. I heard that a couple of times this week as I was in and out of New York City, and certain independent schools and various public schools. Just to give you a statistic, about 46% of the incoming class this year of Boston College came from public schools. So the majority, a plurality actually, do come from public schools. I want to talk in a little more detail about that. Many people think that certain public schools are very large, and it's really hard for students to be as well known by their counselors and by their teachers as if they went to an independent school, where the ratio between the number of people who they have to counsel is much, much smaller. The one thing that I can assure you is that, any admission professional at any self-respecting school never disadvantages a student who, because a counselor may not get to know them because they have to write, 120 recommendations for students instead of 20, which you see at a lot of independent schools. The same thing goes oftentimes for the quality of the curriculum. You've heard a couple of us refer to that. The other thing that you need to know is you would never be disadvantaged for not taking something that you didn't have the opportunity to take because it wasn't available to you. A lot of independent schools might have 20 to 40 different advanced placement classes or a full IB curriculum. And maybe some of you out there attend a school that has 3 or 4. What selective colleges are looking for is for students to challenge themselves with the best curriculum available to them that they've been recommended for and they can handle. And if that means you've taken all of the advanced courses at your school, and that may only be 3 or 4 of them, then you have met that challenge. If it means that you've maxed out your math because you took the one calculus class that was offered as a junior, you won't be disadvantaged because you weren't able to take something like multivariable calculus because it might not be offered at your school because of budget cuts and any number of things. But public schools vary widely, but I just want to be certain that all of you out there know that you're not at any disadvantage because of, you're not paying private funding, to go to an independent school. And there's not, of course, just like for colleges, one of the words that Stephen was talking about was fit. Now there's a right fit for everybody. And it's the same way for high schools as well. So just disabuse yourself of that myth, please.
Thank you, Howard, for all of your insight. And next we have another myth that we typically hear that we wanted to debunk here tonight, and that's private institutions are too expensive. I will not be able to afford going to Boston College. Mary Beth, what do you have to say about this?
Lots. I have lots to say about this. And it's so great to have this opportunity, Cindy, and for all my colleagues and their comments. I think we've just been working towards this particular endpoint and talking about myths. I think for every student in our audience this evening, we really have to reconsider the process itself, and that it's not just about selecting the schools that you're applying to and submitting your applications and getting your essays and letters of recommendation forwarded. That's part one. Part two is affordability. And this, we're really here to help you as best as we can, and knowing that you're going to cast a wide net in your college search. Affordability has to be the second part of this process. And it actually can't wait until April of your senior year. It really needs to start now as you're carving out your lists. Also look into the affordability factors. There are generally 2 types of aid that Stephen had referenced in the beginning of his remarks, and that is need-based aid. That is a combination usually of federal and institutional aid when we're talking about private institutions. And then for public universities, it's primarily federal assistance that you're receiving, and sometimes state-based aid as well. And then there's also merit-based awards, and that can be that can be awarded due to a particular talent that a student has. Maybe you're graduating in the top 10% of your senior class. Maybe you have a very strong music talent or athletic talent. You may be a student that is bringing something extra special to that particular college or university. So that can be considered to be a merit-based scholarship. Tonight, we're going to focus mainly on need-based financial aid, and this is the other piece. So again, going back to process, remember that what I hope that you remember tonight be that it is a two-step process. It's the application, and then it's affordability. So when we're talking about need-based aid and that affordability factor, there are tools that actually are required of all colleges and universities, public and private. It is for any institution that is receiving a federal loan program, they are required to actually have access to what's called a tuition calculator or a net price calculator. The net price calculator allows the student and or their family to plug in information regarding wages, information about if they own a home or if they don't own a home, or if they have particular savings that they've put aside for college education. That allows you to plug in that information, and with the caveat that it's not finite and it's not a perfect system, but instead the principle behind these net price calculators are that it's to give you some indication of what your potential need-based financial aid may look like from a particular college or university. These usually do require about 15 and 20 to 20 minutes of your time. It may also require that you are able to have conversation with your families about having access to their previous year's tax information if they submit tax information. So gathering those documents would probably be a good place to start. And then sitting down either on your own or with a counselor, a parent, a guardian, close friend of the family that can help you navigate these waters, because it can seem overwhelming. However, if you get in front of this, I can assure you that it will be a much better process in the end for everyone involved. And so with the net price calculator, there's also what you'll learn is called, the acronym is called EFC. And that's the estimated family contribution. So that's potential estimate of what your financial obligation would be towards a years of education, not just tuition, but living on campus, eating in the dining halls, participating in student life, spending money for books, and just general personal expenses. And if travel becomes a component as well, that's going to be part of it. This can seem, again, like like a lot of steps to the process, but if you do have some guidance, definitely take advantage of those resources. We're here for you to walk you through the process as well. Please feel like you can call on us or other universities that you may be applying to. And we've heard a lot of questions, and we're always happy to hear more of them and answer them as best as we can. So please, feel welcome to reach out to us at any point. And then the last point that I would like to make to you is that, going back to that phrasing, is that private education is too costly. Yes, there is a sticker shock, absolutely. When you compare that against public universities, and particularly in your home state, and this is why you have to do that analysis for yourself, it can seem like it would be out of your range, beyond your family's ability to send you there. But please don't let that stop the process, because what I will tell you is that more times than not, that private university actually may be more financially affordable for you and your family. And so we invite you to, again, explore both public and private institutions.
Thank you, Mary Beth, for your remarks and for sharing those resources, which we have here on the screen, and also you can go to bc.edu/admission and click on the affordability tab to get all of the information, details, as well as contact information for financial aid, so you can continue to do your research. And knowledge is power. So make sure that you're gathering all the information that you need along the way. And thank you everyone for all of your remarks. I know that we wanted to set the tone and break the ice by going through a couple of these things that we hear that many times don't really apply to every single institution, or don't apply at all in terms of the application process. So we now want to turn it over to the students and the families who are tuning in, and their questions are just fantastic. I'm already reviewing some of them. So I hope that we can get through as many questions as we can for the remainder of the hour that we have together. And so we'll start with this first question, and I hope that some of you, maybe one or two of you, can answer this question. When it comes to the holistic review, which we talked about earlier, what is your process like, especially when it comes to reviewing an application? Do you have a system in place in terms of what you review first? Do you stop reviewing an application when you notice something? Let's start to demystify some of these misconceptions that students have. First of all, we do review every single application that comes through and every single piece of your application, but everyone, I guess, has a different style in terms of what you're reviewing first and how you're putting together all of the pieces of the puzzle. So would any of you like to comment on this question?
I'll go first. I think you summed it up neatly, Cindy. I think we work in our office in a system where we have great autonomy and everyone has their own styles. We try to get to the end point the same, no matter how we do things, but everyone has particular things they like to look at. And the way this question was asked, I prefer to look at the quantitative first. So I'll look at a transcript first. I'll look at test scores if they're available. And then, I like to, that gives me sort of the foundation of what I begin to think about a student. And then I like to save the objective things for last, because for me, that humanizes it. The important point to keep in mind is that, as you said, we look at everything. There is not a point at which we stop. And I would gainsay that everybody, if you read the essay first, or if you do the recommendations first, no matter what we think of those, we don't stop. You file an application, you deserve a fair and equitable evaluation, and everybody gets that. You get that whether or not we have a year when we get 25,000 applications or 35,000 applications. So I think that there is no right or wrong way. You just want to be certain that you digest everything that's available and make the best possible decision.
I'll add one more thing just to what Howard said. Yeah, there's no cutoff. Like exactly what Howard said, we go through the entire application. Listen to how he reads. I do read a bit differently than him. I go through your Common App first. So I'll see kind of all the different things about you. Then I'll read your BC supplement as far as a writing supplement. Then I read score report, and then I'll look at a transcript and test scores. So we all do things a little bit differently. We get to the same point at the end, but yeah, it doesn't matter how many applications we're reading in a day or through an entire admission cycle. We don't stop on page 1 of an application ever. We go through it all the way to the end because we're always learning as much as we can about you. So maybe one thing may not be perfect, or maybe one thing might be a little subpar, but we keep going because maybe there's something else in there where we say, no, it doesn't matter. We understand now kind of why these things happen, and we want this person at Boston College. My colleague Paul Benito always says, we are creating a class. We are putting a class together. And you do that by going through every application from beginning to end.
Thank you both.
And just to add a little bit too, just to speak as a general admissions process, not every school does it that way. So, there are some schools that have committee review. There are some that have a committee of 2. There are schools where many people see your application. There are schools where they do not spend a lot of time on your application. So I think it's a great question because it's good for you to start asking that question of colleges, how do you review? When a college says they're holistic, make them have to prove it by saying, what exactly are the things that you hope for me to be able to show in your process? A lot of families will ask me, what am I looking for? I actually don't know until I see it. So for you, it's about information and sharing that information and not thinking it's just about impressing somebody. So it's a great question, and I think it's something that you should ask of all the institutions that you happen to be applying for. Is let them have to prove how it is they shape their class.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Here's another question about the application. When it comes to the essays, any advice that you can give to students who are writing the essay? And in this case, we have the personal statement that comes through the common application. And then Boston College also has a supplemental essay. Many universities will have a supplemental essay that is specific to the university. Is it okay to write about the same topic for both essays? Or do you have another advice when it comes to this?
I'll go. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. And a great question from anonymous attendee. So glad to have you with us this evening. I would be delighted to address your question. Hopefully this is just going to echo the comments that my colleagues have so well articulated in talking about holistic admission. Personality goes a long way for us. We don't have the opportunity to see your awesomeness day in and day out. We are not with you all the time. We actually are not in position to welcome you to our campus, unfortunately. And nor are we able to visit your high schools at this point. So when we're reviewing the application, it's really that incredible short range or short time frame that we have, but our focus is completely on you. And we want to know how you react to maybe things when they don't go your way. We're interested in maybe what your family dynamic is like, what the dinner table conversations are like, or what you and your friends are interested in talking about. If you have a sense of humor, I always encourage students, let it shine, but also know that as we are building a class and building community, if you're more of a maybe shy, slightly reserved type of personality, that's great too, because you can share those pieces of yourself through your writing. I think with supplemental essays, I will quickly say that I guess my soapbox is always, no matter it's for BC or other institutions that require supplemental essay, is to understand the question, what they're asking you to do. Perhaps why they're asking that question, what they're hoping to learn about you. Perhaps it may be why you're applying to that institution. I always remark, specific to Boston College, if you take even a glance at our 4 essay prompts, you will quickly determine and understand that we are not asking a why BC question. We assume that you've arrived at that decision on your own, and we honor it. Instead, those essays really shed a little bit more light on your character, and we're absolutely interested. So please, take the time to understand what we're asking you and respond in kind.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mary Beth. Going along with those questions about the application process and the different items that will be submitted, there's a question here about who should be writing the recommendation letter when it comes to the teacher. Does it matter which teacher writes a recommendation letter? So we require 2 teacher recommendations that come from core subjects. So it can be your math teacher, science, social studies, English or foreign language teachers. And then the other recommendation letter is coming from your counselor. when it comes to the teacher recommendation, it can be from a class where you did extremely well from the beginning, but there are also some really powerful recommendation letters and comments that come from classes where maybe you struggled a little bit and you were able to ask for help, go to the teacher and go to meet them for tutoring sessions or ask for extra credit. And so the teacher recommendations can really attest to how it is that you asked for help and what you did to bring that grade, maybe that C or that B into what it is and what it used to be. So never discount a class where maybe you struggled a little bit to ask that teacher to write that recommendation letter on your behalf. Let's see, moving on with our process here at PC, there is a question here about the Gabelli Presidential Scholarship. And I know, Mary Beth, you were talking about the merit-based scholarship that we have here, which is the full tuition Gabelli Scholarship. What are some things that we look for in the review process that make these students stand out for us to consider them to be Gabelli scholars here? And anyone can answer that. And thank you, Lorenza, for that question.
I'll go for that one. Well, this is the most difficult thing that we do. It is among the most subjective decisions we have to make, to look at the students, and we only consider students who have completed their application by November 1st. They need not apply early decision, but their applications have to be complete by November 1, and then we would consider them, all of those students, for one of those 15 merit scholarships. Everybody is loosely defined as what we would feel among the top 1% of all the high school students in America. So how do you define that? By superb grades, great classes, doing extraordinary things outside of the classroom. And that describes so many more people than we have openings for. And we usually try to get to maybe 70 or 75 finalists for those. And when we sit around committees and discuss these students, there's usually something, one or two things that stand out about their uniqueness, or as my colleague Mary Beth said, their awesomeness, that we see that they successfully impart in the essay, or a counselor who knows them extremely well gives us some insight into someone who is going to be not just a great student, because we think almost everyone we enroll, I would hope everybody we enroll will be a really strong student, but they're going to contribute something additional to that. They're going to be doing something spectacular in the field of leadership or in community service, or in a particular talent that they have. These are students that we think should be competitive for major postgraduate fellowships, Fulbrights, Rhodes, Truman's, National Science Foundation grants. So we look for things in your application that might help us to predict those who are going to just rise to another level, other than just being terrific. And we no longer really have honors programs at Boston College. We think so many of our students would qualify for that, so we don't do that. We've got other things. But similar to that, we used to say that it's just really hard to distinguish. It's almost like you have to, you take students who may have perfect test scores and never had anything other than an A, and they may not rise to that because they might do wonderfully in the classroom, but in terms of presenting themselves in a way that gets us to know them and see them as major contributors above and beyond the classroom, that's their challenge, and our challenge is to recognize that.
Great, thank you, Howard. There are a couple of questions coming in regarding the individual academic divisions here at Boston College in particular. And so when students apply through the Common Application or the QuestBridge application, we accept both applications. They are selecting one out of the 4 academic divisions. Are some divisions easier to get into than others?
I'll take that one. I would say that, maybe I should preface my answer by saying first, the question that's being asked I think we will ask a question then in turn, and it will be, what are you interested in? So the 4 undergraduate divisions that we have are pretty different. So depending on your interest, if you say Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, that could be you're interested in liberal arts, humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, maybe our newest major, which will be human-centered engineering, starting in fall of 2021. If it's Carroll School of Management, you are predisposed to thinking about a pre-professional business curriculum. If it's the Lynch School of Education and Human Development, it could be you want to become a teacher. It could be you want to be in an educational field. It could be human services professions. And then if it's nursing, then yeah, the Cornell School of Nursing, that's where you'd apply. So, okay, let's go with, the question was, are certain ones easier to get into than others? So we're asking acceptance rates. And I will say last year, our overall acceptance rate for Boston College was 26.4%. I will say that Carroll School and Cornell School of Nursing were probably a few to maybe 5 percentage points more selective. Morrissey College of Arts and Science was probably right around 26.4 because we get the vast majority of applications to the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences. And then Lynch School of Education and Human Development, I would say it was maybe 1 or 2% less selective than 26.4. So overall, you're looking at 4 undergrad divisions that are highly selective or incredibly selective. So I don't know if there's a way to game the system in terms of like a strategy of which one would I apply to. And that's kind of a question that we'll take over the phone, or maybe at high school visits, people will ask that question. So I think that's one way of maybe looking at where you might want to apply based upon your interest. And let's say you get into Boston College, you will be in that undergraduate division for 1 full year. And then you can try, if you decide, no, I actually didn't want this particular undergrad division, you can try and do an inter-school transfer at the end of your freshman year. And in general, you should be able to transfer into 3 of the 4 undergrad divisions. The Carroll School of Management, it's incredibly difficult to transfer into once you're already at BC. They allow, in a lottery system, 10 students per year. So hopefully that answers the question in terms of kind of selectivity across all 4 undergrad divisions, but also maybe looking at someone's particular interest in one of the 4 undergrad divisions.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steve.
Stephen. If I could just add to, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say that, and we never know from year to year if that's going to change. Paula, I beat you to the punch there, my friend, because it wasn't so long ago that nursing wasn't the most selective program. And for many, many years, it was Morrissey. It wasn't called Morrissey then, but it was the College of Arts and Sciences. So it all has to do with the ratio of how many seats are there in the respective school and how many students are applying. And a lot of times those shifts happen very subtly, but they don't happen just for Boston College. It's kind of a universal thing where students, right now in nursing, there are so many job openings, there's increased pay, some of our nurses are getting bonuses like their athletes to sign with particular hospitals. So another thing that to reinforce what my colleague Stephen said, you can't really game the system because it's not predictable.
Great, thank you. And as a follow-up along those lines, extracurricular activities, do they have to match what it is that the student is applying to the certain academic division? For example, for business school, are we looking for activities that will show us that the student wants a career in finance or in marketing? Or, for nursing, are we looking for students who have had some kind of experience in the hospitals? Can we just talk briefly about that?
Well, I understand that many students and families, you look at this process as an A to B journey where, college equals career, career equals success. And, I would hope that at some point you realize that education is a tool that will reframe success for you. And being exposed to other disciplines and other areas while you're in college is part of that formative journey of realizing that you can have a desire to go into the business field, but get to college and realize that you also can write well within the business field to combine two different fields. So we wouldn't want you to feel as if within the limitations of whatever your environment is, that would work against you if you didn't have the ability to do things within the business world, or if you didn't have the ability to join certain clubs or organizations because they weren't offered. I mean, we are looking for citizens, and we want you to come to our liberal arts education so you can grow and evolve in a lot of different fields. So it's great that you have these extra activities, but we really want your passions. And if your passion is to have sort of a growth mindset, then we'll appreciate that, because that's what we're hoping that that's the experience you'll have at BC, is being open and tolerant of all these other fields. So while it's great to have a mindset right now from what you've been exposed to, realize we want you to be open, to be exposed, to evolve as a citizen that's going to get a lot of things, a lot of opportunities grown at you. And the way technology is growing now, in the next 18 months, there'll be a whole new set of jobs. I mean, I was just talking with my son who wanted to go into, game design. That was his thing from the time he was 10 years old, was, game design and getting into software design. And now he's in cybersecurity because that is the field that's hot right now. And he never thought that his computer science interest would lead him into a cybersecurity field that has grown. So I think it's great that you have these activities that are geared towards a particular career. But if you're not, I don't think we're going to penalize you, because we know that when you come to BC, you're going to be exposed to a lot of other activities as well.
Great, thank you, Paul. There's a question here about early decision, and in particular, are there any advantages to applying early decision 1 or early decision 2, or are they both viewed roughly the same? So this is actually our second year having early decision rounds, and we're super excited. If Boston College is your top choice university and you see yourself finding your home away from home here, you might be considering early decision. Early decision is binding, meaning that if you get admitted to Boston College through ED1 or ED2, whichever round for early decision, you're coming and you have to withdraw your applications from the other universities. There are no advantages to early decision 1 or 2. The only difference is by when you apply and by when you find out. So be mindful of the deadlines in terms of ED1 and 2, but we saw roughly the same number of applications. Selectivity was there for both. It just really depends on whether you're ready for that November 1st deadline for early decision 1, so that you find out in December, or if you feel that you need to wait and apply for the second round in January and you find out in February. There are a couple of advantages to applying early decision nonetheless. You apply early, you find out early, which we just talked about. You're also usually in a smaller pool of applicants in comparison to regular decision. And then finally, you will receive the same financial aid consideration if you're applying ED or regular decision. So if you have any questions about finances, we're more than happy to connect with you when it comes to early decision, but it's the same process where you're submitting the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and the CSS profile. And we do meet 100% of full demonstrated need through need-based financial aid. So that's something to consider. Do any of you have any more comments around early decision or this process as a whole for families?
I just one quick thing to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know that tonight is kind of just going through, kind of these myths and things. And we've only, like you said, we've only done 1 year of ED. And in that 1 year of ED, I think I've learned a lot from applicants. If you are someone who says, yes, I definitely want to do an early decision program, I definitely want to find out, and you do all the research in terms of, okay, what percentage of a class is filled through early decision? And you feel like, yeah, you know what, through my research and through the schools I'm interested in, I know I want to do an early decision binding program. ED1 and ED2, whether it's BC or another place that has both programs, that's almost like you get to put in 2 bites of the apple, right? So ideally you get into your ED1 school and that's where you're going. But ED2 now exists where, okay, a school is going to say, okay, at ED2, we are now your first choice. And that can make a difference as well. So just kind of different ways of looking at this process. I think sometimes the terminology or the jargon gets a little bit confusing for people, especially if you're going through this process for the very first time ever. So that's kind of just one way of looking at ED1 and ED2, and something that I think I've learned definitely from applicants and my colleagues over the first year.
Great, thanks so much, Stephen. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. Thanks so much for asking. Moving into diversity, inclusion, equity, and access here at Boston College and some of the initiatives that have come through given social unrest in the country. We just want to spend some time here just to talk about how the university promotes diversity, inclusion, and what resources are available to our students. Obviously, one piece of the puzzle is for us to create access and bring students from underrepresented backgrounds, different backgrounds, to be part of this community that we're creating here at BC. But what happens once they're here at BC? You know, what's available in terms of resources to help them persist, to help with that retention and that graduation, those graduation rates that we were talking about earlier?
Well, one way that we do that before you take advantage of resources is to get you to start thinking to think differently about diversity. I think sometimes we approach this from an ethnic and racial background, not realizing that, you know, coming to a university that's attracting people from all over the world is going to give you a different perspective of what diversity is, and appreciate the dialogue and discussion that can come out of that. Because when you're going off to college, as much as you are very concerned with, you know, obtaining a job and obtaining the financial resources to be successful, there's also, you know, there's also a part of that journey is being a better neighbor, being a better parent, you know, being a better partner, and being exposed to learning about the world so you can be a global citizen. So at Boston College, we've been fortunate that not only do we attract students from all over the world with all these different backgrounds, but we promote the dialogue and discussions that's necessary for you to take advantage of it. There are a lot of universities that have, you know, incredible numbers, but are they promoting you learning about the differences, which is what you should demand of a school that talks about diversity? So I think at BC, before you even get into some of the resources, you have the ability to have a fertile ground to be able to evolve, to be prepared to live anywhere in the world with anyone in the world.
Diversity in every sense of the word. Thank you, Paul. Would others like to comment on this as well?
Yeah, I'll talk a tiny bit about something that we just learned about a week and a half ago at a staff meeting. You know, part of the diversity is socioeconomic diversity as well. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the term Pell Grant or Pell eligible, the neediest students qualify for a federally funded program called Pell Grants. And, you know, private colleges like Boston College, you know, want to be certain that we offer equity and inclusion to all students, not just those who find this eminently affordable. So that's why we need blind and meet the full demonstrated need of the incoming class. But another way of assessing a university, similar to what my colleague Paul was talking about, is, you know, how well do students who come from more challenged backgrounds financially, how do they do? And, you know, those who are recipients of this Pell Grant, we just found out that Boston College has the third highest graduation rate of any institution in America. And I did a program for a large group called the College Bound Initiative in New York City today, featuring maybe 12 or 14 high schools. And that was an important thing to mention to these students and to other students and counselors, because it shows that if you have a high graduation rate like that for the more needy students, it means that you have to have the support and the resources and the mentoring in order for students to get over some rough spots. And, I remember, there's lots of schools that may by sheer number talk about a higher percentage of, students of color, referred to at Boston College as HANA students, African American, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American. But oftentimes that raw number doesn't mean a whole lot if they're not retained at an extremely high rate and if the students aren't graduating at a high rate. And I think my friends and I are blessed to be at an institution that, I don't know if you can put it sort of colloquially, we put our money where our mouths are. We take this seriously. We're not going to have someone enroll here and not show them the cura personalis, one of the Jesuit mottos, care for the entire person. So I think that's an important thing to talk about when you talk about diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Howard. And the conversation continues. We know that we were not able to get to answer every single question in the Q&A, but your questions were fantastic. And as my colleagues have said tonight, please continue to ask these questions of us and other members of the Board of Admissions at different institutions that you are considering. We are human beings who are reviewing your applications behind the screen. And so, we enjoy learning about your stories, and we feel very privileged and humbled that we're able to get a piece of your life story through the application process. Our contact information is on the screen, but also if you go to the website bc.edu/admission, you'll be able to search by your high school to see who here in the Board of Admissions reviews your application, who knows the curriculum at your high school, because we do review applications regionally. And so we each have a different part of the world that we review applications for. So go to the website. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your regional representative with those particular questions that you might have. Also, we have some incredible virtual programming. We're actually, I think, the most available we've ever been in our careers due to the virtual world that we live in. So please make sure that you take advantage of the resources such as live virtual campus tours that you can tune into while our campus remains closed to visitors, as well as one-on-one conversations with students. Please make sure that you're connecting with the current students who are taking classes at BC and are interacting with our professors. And then a series of different events that have been recorded and are continuing on through the next few days as part of our Discover Boston College series. So we want to thank you. We want to wish you the best in terms of this process, and we hope that you have a wonderful night, and thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you to all of our panelists, Howard Singer, Stephen Koo, Maribeth Chevry, and Paul Bonito. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Cindy, for moderating. Great job.
Cindy, and thank you all for being out there.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe.
Take care.